Before we dive into the latest around the Dallas Cowboys, we have a like battle coming up, and is ongoing, I should say, between us and Bears Now. This is the battle for second place. We got some ground to catch up against the Raiders Report. We're 1,000 and a couple hundred ahead of Bears Now. That's like one video, though. So let's keep it high. Hit that like button. Help us out on today's show. We have an update to get into on the Micah Parsons front from our good friend, the People's Insider Pretty Rickey, stating, even though I don't think he will be traded, the Packers have a very serious trade offer on the table to the Cowboys for Micah Parsons. I actually am inclined to believe the Packers have an offer out for Micah Parsons. In fact, I don't think they are the only team that has an offer in some capacity out to Micah. But like Rickey acknowledges, having an offer out doesn't mean a trade is actually going to happen. If anything, I would be surprised if the Cowboys traded their best player to one of their biggest historical rivals. That would actually make me very sad to be a Cowboys fan. But it is noteworthy. It is newsworthy, even if we don't think Micah's going to get traded, because this is an update. This is a development. Once you put the trade request out there, this type of stuff is going to happen. And it's why it is so disconcerting as a Cowboys fan, that it's gotten to this point when it never needed to. In the end, I don't think a Micah Parsons trade ends up happening. But the fact that the trade request is out there makes it a possibility, makes it a potential threat. So to kind of sum this up again here, I agree with Rickey, he's not going to get traded, at least doesn't think he'll be traded. We can't rule it out, though. I've seen the reaction of like, oh, everything's fine, nothing at all has changed. That just kind of feels like hopium. He issued a trade request. He is upset with the organization. For the first time, he actually is open to leaving. Doesn't mean the Cowboys will do it. All of this can be solved if the Joneses just talk to him. Jerry's out there talking about how, well, haven't you talked to Michael? No, why not? Because that's the argument. It makes no sense. It feels like we're doing the whole nonsense of just, we love the attention, we can't resist. At some point, it's going to bite him in the ass. Maybe it's this time. And this, I mean, more than the contract side. Maybe it's not. But this is noteworthy to me. So what is your one-word reaction to the latest Micah Parsons report? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Here, Jalen Tolbert is next up here. Look, there have been headlines, videos, articles, everything else in between, suggesting that a Jalen Tolbert trade is under consideration, that the Cowboys are having trade talks about Jalen Tolbert. There's a problem here. No one's actually said that. I tried to dig back and figure out, okay, there's been roster projection stuff from Sports Illustrated, didn't have them on there. That's one thing. But trying to get back to the original who said it first, the nearest I could find was, you know how this is dangerous, an Instagram account with about 5,000 followers citing unnamed rumors as to why. Which sometimes when that happens, in general, when people don't cite things, okay, you just made it up. Right? So that's where it started from. So it kind of has become this bad game of telephone where I think it was really just well, what if trade him? The suggestion, the idea, the talking point of a Jalen Tolbert trade does have some logic, actually. That does make some sense for the Cowboys. But the idea of it, the rationale, the logic behind it, that is different than news, right? And I am always down to discuss whatever's being talked about. Good, bad, ugly, happy, sad, news, rumors, trades, cuts, free agency. Happy to talk about it. We do 2 shows a day. There's plenty of time to talk about everything. I just want to make sure we're always presenting it right. So, yeah, you might have seen the headlines on it, but it's really more of well, would this make sense stage? Which is fine, but we have to have the context of it being in more of the, hey, does this actually make sense for the Cowboys, and not present it as well, they've had trade talks, there we go. That's how I want to frame this, which we'll spend some more time on this year. So, chance for you guys to comment, because I know how you guys feel about Jalen Tolbert more often than not. I know how most of the votes are going to go. Would you trade him? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know in the comment section of today's show. We'll make this the pinned comment, by the way, so take advantage. Head down there of a potential ad coming here. Y for yes, N for no. Would you guys trade Jalen Tolbert? Couple of reasons you could justify a Jalen Tolbert hypothetical trade. If you could get help at an area of need, like a defensive tackle spot, a cornerback, I think that would actually be a pretty logical idea for you to consider. that you would be able to fill a bigger need with a spot that maybe you have some additional depth in terms of your wide receiver room. And I think DT corner is probably a bigger need right now. You could also free up a roster spot, which would allow you to carry one of an additional Jalen Brooks, who he might make team even though you guys don't like it, and I'm not a huge fan of it either. Free up spot for a Trayshawn Holden, a Ryan Flanoy. And, you're still going to use Kevontae Turpin a pretty decent amount as like a wide receiver, 3.5. Jonathan Mingo could maybe, if you think he's going to take a step forward, that's a big deal. Flanoy, you don't have to risk losing one of those guys to waivers. And for a guy that's in the last year of his deal in the same way that Jalen Tolbert is. I think the ceiling for Tolbert is limited, especially with having Pickens and Lamb. He's not going to have more yards than last season. So how much do you really need out of that number 3 receiver? And I think compared to guys like a Mingo, a Flanoy, a Brooks, I think there would be some actual value. He did produce last year. He produced more than guys that got $10 million contracts in free agency. I think that is worth mentioning. So maybe not elite value, but there is some value. And the production is also a reason not to potentially trade away Jalen Tolbert. That what he brings you, even if you guys don't always like it, we all just forgot about the Steelers game-winning catch, by the way. The production that he has brought to the Cowboys organization does have value. If something were to happen, you'd want to have him out there. He did put up 610 yards. That's not nothing in the end. That is something. 7 touchdowns. He was serviceable. I think he's more of a replacement level-ish wide receiver. It's he could not be your wide receiver too, but as the 3 is fine. I think Dak seems to trust him. To a fault at times, that's kind of an issue for him. The other guys we mentioned, Mingo, etc., those are all kind of more potential-based. Turpin's got to be a full-time receiver. He, Mingo still hasn't actually done anything remotely close to what Tolbert did last season. The traits aren't great for Tolbert. He can play inside, outside, and he helps on special teams. He actually plays that gunner role. He can do it. Haven't seen Mingo really do it yet. Turpin is going to be a return guy, obviously. That's why there's a decent amount of chance that hey, maybe they just go down and pursue, Jalen Brooks, receiver 6, goes to special teams. I think that's kind of boring, but that's a real possibility. In the end, if you could get actual help at defensive tackle or corner, I would consider a Jalen Tolbert trade because that, I think, makes my team better in the short term and potentially in the long term as well. But if I'm not getting him anything good back, or at least, impactful or serviceable back, I'll keep him. I'll keep my depth at receiver. I think I can get my other guys down to the practice squad fairly easily, and I'll let them leave in free agency next year and maybe get a comp pick at that point. And this Dallas Cowboys hoodie is on sale. It was $55. Now it's just $33. It is the short sleeve hoodie, so you can get yours today. We'll put this link in the comments section and the description of today's show. That's chatsports.com/DAL hoodie. It'll be in the 3rd paragraph, by the way, of the description. So get yours today at chatsports.com/DAL hoodie. Breece Hall trade rumors are back. And again, always want to consider the source here. They come from Tony Pauline, who respectfully is hit and miss at best. He was a big guy pushing the Cowboys, loved Damian Martinez, who they passed on repeatedly, actually. He was wrong. The Broncos going to go trade Surtain for a quarterback. Was big McCarthy Patriots guy. Raiders are going to go OT in round 1. Said the Cowboys would take Matthew Golden over Tedderell and McMillan and never mentioned offensive line as an option. So, asterisk it. But here's the report from Pauline. It says that people close to the situation speculate the Jets could move Hall by the trade deadline. Then move forward with Braylon Allen as well as Isaiah Davis and eventually draft back in 2026. Allen surprised everyone last season and played beyond expectations. Look, I think this falls into the it's plausible category. Kind of like the Tolbert idea originally. It does make some sense, right? Admittedly, per Pauline, it's all speculation. Close to the situation, speculate, that's really hedged reporting that, sends off alarm bells for me of, if it's not true, he's just going to say, well, they never said they were going to do it. Okay, then why report it type of deal. There are other issues here that I'll get to. Let's say you are the GM of the Cowboys, or I guess owner of the Cowboys. Would you trade for Breece Hall? T for trade, P for pass. Once again, go ahead and sound off for me in the comment section of today's show. T for your trade for him, P for your pass, and you don't think that's actually an area of concern for Dallas. I think amid these Breece Hall trade rumors, he is clearly an upgrade over what the Cowboys currently have in the backfield with Javonte Williams and the banged-up guys behind him. However, I am not convinced the Jets want to move on from him, at least and especially not right now. They want to run the ball a lot with Justin Fields. They're going to need Breece Hall to be a part of that. Now, if they're bad come trade deadline time, can certainly, potentially, reevaluate that. I am not convinced right now the Cowboys view the backfield as an area of need right now, that they might actually feel good with the combination of Javonte Williams and everybody else on that depth chart. And we haven't really seen them play yet in the preseason. We haven't seen Javonte be in a real, actual game with this Dallas Cowboys team. Maybe we do against the Ravens on Saturday. And Miles Sanders working his way back from injury. Jaden Blue's banged up. I do think that Hall as a player is better than what the Cowboys have right now. Maybe the potential of Jaden Blue is higher, but that's also like the floor is way lower, right? Hall should have gone for 1,000 yards back in 2023 with the Cowboys, or the Jets messed up the yardage he needed and screwed that one up pretty bad. I also dispute this idea that, Allen was so good last year for the Jets. He really wasn't, though. He averaged 3.6 yards per carry. And it's a smaller sample size. I get that. The supporting cast was not very good either. But, that is far lower than what Breece Hall was averaging. The gap from Braylon Allen to Breece Hall is bigger than the gap from Braylon Allen down to what Ezekiel Elliott was last year. There's a pretty sizable difference then. Now, if you want more Cowboys coverage right here on the channel, all you have to do is subscribe. Hit that sub button, youtube.com/@CowboysTV. Some more updates on the DaRon Bland situation. He again confirmed the Cowboys and his agent have had contract talks. Feel like everyone just kind of rewrote the same story they did last time. Bland said he also hoped to get a contract extension done with the Cowboys, and he'd love to find a way to be here long term. I'm sure he'd love that, especially before hey, they start doing some maybe he's got to play nickel conversation stuff, which is always a bit dangerous. Highest paid corners per year right now. Sauce Gardner's at $30 million. I don't think DaRon Bland's going to command $30 million. I would say that the difference between the highest paid nickel and other guys is significantly higher. There is a massive difference between those types of players. So, if I were DaRon Bland, and I appreciate him saying all the right things right now, I were DaRon Bland, I don't think he wants to play nickel corner in a contract year. Because those guys simply don't get paid as much. Especially when you were not a first-round pick. The Trent McDuffie deal potentially could look pretty similar to the DaRon Bland deal. How does that all play out? I don't know. The Cowboys aren't good with these kind of awkward contracts unless the player just takes way less. So what is the percent chance the Cowboys sign DaRon Bland specifically before the season? Let me know in the comments section of today's show. Go vote. Percent chance the Cowboys sign DaRon Bland. Couple quick injury notes here. Did not participate at practice on Wednesday. Tyler Guyton, Sadiq Charles, Jaden Blue, Brevin Spanford, Kalen Carson, and Elijah Clark. Several of those guys we knew were not going to play at all or practice on Wednesday. Spanford, Charles is still nicked up. Carson's going to be ready around week 1. Jaden Blue and Elijah Clark are the ones that stand out of okay, that's kind of noteworthy for where they're at on the roster. These 6 players probably aren't going to end up playing against the Ravens. Schottenheimer left the door open a little bit for Jaden Blue. I'd be surprised. Happily surprised, but I'd be surprised that ended up happening. So I am curious, and we'll talk more about this on a future video. How does this play out? Who plays where? What does this overall situation look like for the second preseason game? He said Tyler Booker is going to play. Hopefully that doesn't change like it did late last week, but I think there is some uncertainty about who's going to play and how much in that preseason game. Fortunately, doesn't look like Jaden Blue will be among them.